My father always says, your expensive cars, your drivers drive, and this junk, he calls it, you drive, because it's the only thing I really drive. I used to drive cabs in Melbourne, and
Wow.
I used to drive for 12, 16 hours a night. So I lost my charm of that driving, especially automatic cars. I like the
raw rugged.
manuals and all that. And then, of course, if you take it out to more jungle roads and stuff like that, that becomes very interesting.
Welcome to a very, very rainy episode of History on Wheels. This is the program where we share our love and passion for the history of cars with you and a very special guest. We do have a very special guest today and his car that's coming up soon. But before that, what cars are we really talking about? Well, we're talking about something tough and rugged. When we think tough and rugged in perspective to cars, we think big and built like a tank. But no, these were cars that changed that game. They were small, compact and agile, but they still had a great ramp over, breakover and departure angle. They had a narrow frame and short wheelbase. We're talking, of course, of the iconic brand Jeep. And when I say iconic, I mean it. Jaise we say Xerox for anything that we copy, or Fevicol for anything that we chipkow. We say Jeep for SUV. People still use that term today. So yes, it is iconic, and it is really the beginning of that very popular segment of SUV as we know it today. It has a very long history. It began way back in 1941. That's 82 years ago almost from now. And it began because the American military, knowing that it was going to World War II, decided that they want to build their own light vehicles. Now, two companies bid for this. It was the American Bantam Car Company and it was Willys Overland. Though Bantam did the first draft and they came out with the plans quickly in about a month, it was really Willys Overland that actually got the contract, with the understanding that Ford Motor Company would build the cars because they had the larger capacity. From the CJs to the 4xe or the electric vehicles of Jeep today, the brand has come a long way. It's been a long journey in which the brand has changed hands a couple of times. In fact, the cars that we know today out on the roads were built when the brand was under different automakers' names. Now, Cherokee came when it was under the hands of Renault, and the Wrangler that we see today came when it was under the hands of Chrysler. And even Mahindra have licensed the Jeep to be made in India. And we're going to discuss all of that and more with our special guest today when it stops raining.
So as a child, one had this army set where there were these Jeeps of the Second World War, because they were between the Allied forces and the Axis forces, and so that's where I got into this.
And today, to share our passion and love with cars with us on History on Wheels, we have not only an avid car fan, but an avid Jeep fan and his Willys Jeep.
Hi.
Thank you, Randeep, so much for sharing this with us. We absolutely love it.
There's, of course, a lot of romanticism attached to this Jeep in the Hindi movies, songs, Rajesh Khanna, Dharmendra and all these people in these wonderful things in the hills and all that. So that whole romance kind of stayed in my head, and I wanted one. And I went to shoot this series called Cat in Punjab. We were shooting in Amritsar, and there's a friend of mine called Maninder Singh who also likes Jeeps and cars and stuff like that. So I'd been asking him for a couple of years that I wanted to get one made. So then he found out this old Sardarji called Guru Nanak Jeep maker or whatever his name was. I can't remember exactly. So he found that guy and he said that he'll make it. So I said, they usually make these Jeeps with big wheels and make it really modern with those, aircraft seats and those big hoofers and all that. So when I went to him and I said, no, I want something very basic with tires which would look old and all that. So he was quite intrigued, and because he didn't get many customers for that particular thing. He was a great Jeep maker. He's made a great Jeep for me. So we had a choice between which engine to put in. So there was a choice between Bolero
Okay.
and Toyota. I chose Toyota because with the Bolero engine, though it's very good, there's too much sound, and and because the Jeep is open,
clatter,
it's very
yeah.
like you can't talk amongst ourselves, and it generally kills the ambience. So we put a Toyota CRD3 engine on a Mahindra & Mahindra saloon chassis, and with these Kamani wala, old shock ups, which are much better
Yeah.
than these new ones.
Yeah.
And
Leaf springs.
yeah, and I made the body a bit stronger.
Yeah.
It's a bit heavier body.
Okay.
And it's a bit longer. It's about 6 inches longer than the original Willys.
Yeah.
Because I did not want the person sitting at the back here
To have.
to be on top of the wheel.
Yeah.
This
for
is
the
where the
ride.
design of most cars go wrong, and that's why the people at the back
Are
are
bouncing
always
around.
feeling the bumps. So when you sit in this one, you're sitting a few
Behind the
inches
wheel.
behind, and it's very comfortable. And he's given me the old world things like the meters and everything.
There's some
And-
really cool stuff, like that little telephone at the back, which really
Yeah.
gives you that full on
there was-
army feel.
Yeah, there was an antenna as well, which
Yeah.
I took off because it was just looking a bit too much.
Yeah,
But
and-
you can put things in these phones and have them operational.
Yeah, the
I tell
jerry
you.
can, the phone.
Yeah,
I was
the-
noticing all the
Yeah, the
really
jerry can. He's
rugged
given me
bits.
a nice tow bar as well.
Yeah.
And and it's got a nice height. It's got a nice height, and it really, when you drive it, you can feel on a rough terrain. You can feel the wheels go.
The extension, the articulation.
Yeah.
This is the charm of these vehicles, and it's the beauty of this vehicle. Now, being a horseman, I believe even in horses, you have that little bit zara hatke. You did show jumping and stuff like that, where
Yeah.
there was obstacles. Is that why Jeep? Because it can go over any obstacle?
Yeah, it can go over any obstacle more than any new vehicles that I have driven. I was doing extraction, and we were doing all these car stunts in which I had no control over the car.
Yeah.
Neither did Chris. So there's another guy lying in the boot of the car with a video game screen who's actually driving the car, and he cannot see out the front.
Wow.
Really, I was so scared.
Amazing.
And in that, because it was free, so I was my
Yeah.
first take was a bit like this, but I was moving the steering wheel. So Tom Seeger, who is the cinematographer, he came to me and he said, it's a power steering. I said, oh yeah, shit. Because you're pretending so
Yeah.
much, you pretended a bit too much.
A bit too much.
Yeah, but this is that steering which is given a little space for me to feel like that.
There's so much about this Jeep that still is in common with, the Jeeps of today. This 7-slot grille and the round headlamps, which
Yeah.
I think everybody keeps because that is quintessentially Jeep.
Yes.
Did you know that was actually a contribution by Ford?
Ford and Jeep, both of them made parts which were interchangeable. In World War II, when these things were commissioned, so Ford and Jeep both made it.
So the name Jeep is pretty interesting. Do you know how it got Jeep?
Jeep, there are a couple of theories, I think. One
Yeah.
is that it's like multi-purpose.
Yeah, there was general purpose, which was
General
GP,
purpose, yeah.
and then so they thought that it was an acronym for that. But they also believed that in the American military, new recruits were called Jeeps.
Ah.
And so when this new light vehicle came in, it was also called Jeep. So that's
never,
one of the
never
theories.
ceases to amaze me.
Yeah, pretty
that
interesting.
These old things were new ones.
So that one is one of the few, or I think one of the only four-wheel drive vehicles today also that still has solid axles, which is what made this so...
it does, and it has also got a very high steering and a dashboard, which I feel rather not so comfortable with.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
You like
it's still a nice car. It's a good. I think probably the only off-roader of this time that there is there, which is also a luxury car to some extent, though it's a bit upright and all that.
Tell me, you obviously are quite a history buff because you knew a lot about Jeep and its history and how it all came about. You've also done historic movies like Sarabjit. You're doing a new one, Veer Savarkar.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
But Savarkar was a big part of our cultural history, which, because of many reasons, was brushed under the carpet. In my research and in my movie also, it's not just about Savarkar, it's an overall picture of because the circumstances make a man.
Correct.
So I've taken in account all his shortcomings that people think, and I've addressed them because of how and why he became like that.
Looking forward to seeing this movie now, knowing it's written with a fountain pen and a lot of research has gone into it, and I love watching historic movies.
My co-writer is a kind of a Sanskrit wizard, so he also really helped me transport me back. His name is Utkarsh Maithani. Yeah.
Okay, so a few rapid fire questions for you.
Sure.
A little bit of trivia. Do you know what CJ stands for?
Chief Justice.
Well, it does also, but in Jeep terminology, it was a civilian Jeep. 1945 is when they first made the civilian Jeep.
Civilian
CJ
Jeep.
was a civilian Jeep, and leads me into my next question. Which were the longest running platforms of Jeep? They run 3 decades, and that's rare that a platform runs 3 decades. So the base of the car on which it's built on, for it these days, like every 5 years, a car changes platform, things change, and for them to run 3 decades is quite remarkable. And there's 2 of them.
Well, could be Ford and Jeep or Mahindra.
So it was the CJ5, which was the civilian Jeep that truly people recognize.
Which was like Mahindra.
It's the Wrangler and the CJ5 that ran for 3 decades.
Well, I know something now.
It's
not a rapid fire for me. It's for the audience.
Old versus new.
Old.
Yeah. And horses or horsepower?
That's a tough one. Horses.
Best driving song?
Best driving song.
This one always throws everybody.
Yeah, because
we
so
have
many.
them on our playlist, but then everybody gets
There's
thrown.
the Top of the World. What's that song?
I'm on the top of the world. Are you talking about that old one?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it. And then we have best driving road.
Best driving road. Jungle roads.
And is there like an iconic drive that you wanted to do, like a dream road trip?
I did want to go all across Northeast and drive through the country and experience the 7 different states and their culture.
7 Sisters.
Yeah.
Great one to do. It's absolutely gorgeous. And the last question for you, a car that you're aspiring for.
I don't know. It's
A
a
man of few
depreciating
aspirations,
asset.
I see.
It's a depreciating asset. Probably a Range Rover.
That's really cool. A Jeep man from the heart, because even that was inspired by Jeep. So absolutely right from the heart. It's been great having you on the show. We love talking to you, and all the best for you.
Thank you.